Hey everyone, and welcome back to Jay the One-Eyed Gamer. Today I'm doing a news update on Dynasty Warriors 9 for the 4 characters that were just revealed, who are Zhou Yu, Sima Shi, Ma Dai, and Zhang He. And what I'm going to be talking about is the choices of weapons that we've seen so far, because we've had another drastic change with 2 of the 4 characters I just talked about, that being Zhang He and Ma Dai, getting brand new weapons that I honestly didn't see coming. But first off, let's talk about Zhou Yu, the Wu strategist. Obviously, he's back again with his signature, bow staff, which I think at this point going forward is going to be his new main weapon. I personally liked his old school weapon, his, Elder Sword from, 2 onward. But, ever since 6 when he got the bow staff, I feel like that's more to him and his playstyle. So, all in all, I think, pretty safe bet, pretty safe choice. Nothing really to write home about. Next, let's talk about Sima Shi. Sima Shi is interesting because he's the first Jin character we get to see, and his design, I think, looks really cool. I think it's a nice blend of, like, his 7 and 8 design. And his weapon I find very interesting because instead of giving him his lightning sword, which he's had since Dynasty Warriors 7 Empires, has now reverted back to his base Dynasty Warriors 7 weapon, which is the rapier, which as of this point, I think since Dynasty Warriors 8, I don't believe it belonged to anyone. No, it belonged to Yuan Shao, because Yuan Shao got the extension blade later. But it's very interesting to see him go back to that weapon moveset, because I thought he would keep his lightning sword, which I thought was a little more iconic and more to him as a character. But all in all, I'm okay with his rapier setup as long as he gets his EX back. But we also haven't heard if EXs are coming back to the game. But I'm very interested because he was the one character that made me enjoy the rapier setup. So yeah, A+ to him. The weapon design and the weapon choice, not bad. I think is a safe bet to fall back on. So, But now let's move on to the main topics. First, let's go with Ma Dai. Ma Dai, I think, got the most drastic change so far, next to Jaha Yuan's, twin rods that belong to Taishitsu. Ma Dai this time has actually got the twin halberds that have been Zheng Liao's weapon since Dynasty Warriors 6. And I find this interesting because I didn't actually think he would ever get like a hardcore warrior weapon set. Like when I think of the twin halberds, I either think of like Peng De, who originally had them, or I do think of Zheng Liao, more fierce warriors. Because the way I feel about Ma Dai and the way I felt like he was presented, he was more of like a technical character and more like I don't want to say a joke character because he wasn't a joke, but he just didn't scream warrior, like his armor, his clothing, even now his clothing, they still don't scream like frontline warrior like you would imagine, like a Guan Yu, a Zhang Fei, a Jaha Dun, Zhang Liao, all those guys you would think gets those like really tough weapons that look like they're designed for frontline combat. So I find it very interesting that he got those weapons over Zhang Liao. And it's going to be interesting because how much of his weapon moveset will be returning from the previous games? Like how much animation will they be reusing to do this? Because I personally think it'd be interesting to see if the twin axes were handled differently as in his hands as opposed to Zheng Liao. But I digress, because we also have to figure out what his movesaws are going to be now, because those have changed drastically because he can't use the paintbrush anymore. And if you remember, all his movesaws obviously revolved around the paintbrush. So it's going to be interesting to see what kind of new movesets he gets. I just kind of hope they don't take Zheng Liao's, movesaws from 8 Extreme Legends and Empires and just give it to him. I feel like that's a missed opportunity if they don't give him unique movesaws with the twin axes to make it feel like this is Ma Dai, these are Ma Dai's weapons, and this is how Ma Dai handles the twin axes. So it's very interesting, and I'm very curious to see how they're going to do it. I need to see the game in motion, obviously, before I make any judgments, but needless to say, when I did see the initial picture, it was a very jarring and interesting experience I felt when I first saw it, because I just was like, wow, you gave him the twin axes? Then who's going to get the paintbrush? Because at this point, we don't know who's going to end up with what now. But I'll talk about that probably later in the episode. For now, let's move our attention to Zhang He, who also got another weapon change. This one I don't feel is quite as dramatic, but it did make me like scratch my head and like go, huh? Really? And that is because instead of having his signature claws that he's been known for since Dynasty Warriors 2, he's now got the throwing daggers, which were Wang Yuanji's weapons all the way in the beginning of 7. So I find that interesting, to say the least, because I feel like taking away Zhang Hei's claws are like taking away an iconic weapon from a very iconic character. Because whenever people think of Zhang Hei, they do think of the claw moveset, because that's very much unique to him. And I think it really sets up his flamboyancy. You know, he like makes these elegant swipes and slashes and movements, and he dances around the battlefield. And his movesaws too complemented that as a like very flamboyant warrior. But now that we got the throwing axes, the throwing daggers, it's very interesting because now he goes from a somewhat close range technical warrior character to now of a like crowd control fighter, if that's how they're going to keep the weapons. Because in 7, what makes Yuanji really dangerous in 7 and 8 is the fact that the daggers aren't insanely strong. They don't have a lot of power behind it, but what they make up for that is a lot of spray. Like, that is a crowd control weapon meant to mow down like hundreds of peons in a very arcing manner. So I find it interesting that they decided to give that weapon to Zhang Hei, and that also raises the question, along with Ma Dai, like, what will the weapon moveset be like? Will it still function like it did in 7 and 8, or will it have different functionality with him? Will he get more stylized moves with it? And his movestyles are changing too. Again, I hope he doesn't get like I just hope they don't rip Wang Yuanji's movestyles animations from 7 and 8 and just give it to him, because like I said, that would be a very missed opportunity again, like with Ma Dai. But it's an interesting choice to say the least. I was not expecting him of all characters to lose his signature weapon. I guess that just goes to prove that Koei is playing with our expectations and trying to, I guess, change certain characters, which I'm fine with. That's always cool, especially if you want to bring new people in. You want to bring that in and have new experiences. But at the same time, for someone who's been with the series since all the way in Dynasty Warriors 3, it's very jarring to see certain characters without like weapons that they're known for, or weapons that you think go with them. So it's very interesting to see that, and it's going to be interesting to see how he plays, how his movestyles work, and how other things go with him along with Ma Dai. And with that, I guess we'll also bring this up to now that this has happened, now that we now have several characters whose weapons we thought weren't gonna change, like Taishitsu's twin rods are now gone if there's no clone weapons or movesets, which I hope there isn't. But if we assume that Jaha Yuan now has that, and that weapon is the only weapon of it, he has now essentially got Taishitsu's moveset, which then leaves Taishitsu with unknown weapon. Like, I can't imagine Taishitsu without his twin rods. I can only imagine him with those, even though in history he was known as an archer. But it's going to be very interesting. I don't know, honestly, what weapon they would give him to compensate for that, because I just can't imagine Taishitsu without those rods. Zhang Liao is a little more interesting. Zhang Liao could go back to his Blue Wyvern weapon, which is somewhat of a clone slash different of Guan Yu's Blue Dragon moveset. Guan Yu's is more one-on-one. It was never really that great with like arcs. Zhang Liao's was always more like, I feel like, flexible and movable than Guan Yu's stiffness. And if he gets that weapon back, because as we've seen with Zhang Fei, who got his Serpent Spear back, which was his weapon up until 6, we can see that they're not afraid to go back to old weapons and give them to characters if they feel like that's going to work. So we could see him have Blue Dragon. If we see Zhang Liao get Blue Dragon, I would like to see his moveset be a lot different than Guan Yu's. Like, I want it to be like it was in 5, 4, 3, where his weapon, all they shared was like, it was just the weapon. The only difference was Guan Yu's was usually more golden, and Zhang Liao's is usually more like ivory based. So I'm interested to see what that is. The same would go for Zhang Hei. I don't know who might end up with Zhang Hei's, claw weapons. It's very interesting because there are very few people I can think of, but I don't think they would fit perfectly, like the claws as a moveset. But it's very interesting. This just goes to prove that no weapon is safe. Like, who we think it was going to end up with, who we are sure is going to have their weapon, it's kind of up in the air now. And that's kind of interesting, too, to see what kind of take I think Koei wants to go with Dynasty Warriors 9. Besides it being an open world game, I think they want to experiment with the characters try different things, see what hits, what doesn't hit. And I do give them an applaud for that, because that is kind of a great way to reinvigorate the series and bring new people in and keep us old guards like guessing like, whoa, what? Why this decision? But yeah, that's going to be it for this video, guys. I thank you very much for watching. If you stuck around this long, please leave me a thumbs up if you like these videos. It's a great way to let me know if you want me to do more of these first attempts. So I do apologize if it's too long or if there were problems. I intend to get better with this. Also, I'm also sorry for the lack of content on the channel for now. I've had some issues, of course, but hopefully I'll be getting back into a better schedule of content more regularly at this point. But that's enough of that. I'd also like to thank you guys. If you want to hit that bell button, it lets you know when my videos go up, so you don't have to guess. Please share these around. It really helps out the channel. And, you know, and I do appreciate the watches, like the views. Even if you watch for like a minute or two, it does mean a lot to me. And yeah, I'd like to thank you guys. Sorry that this is rambling. But have a good day, guys. And please also leave in comments below what you think weapons will go to who. Do you think this character's weapon? Do you think certain characters will get other characters' weapon? Like, what do you think is going to happen in Dynasty Warriors 9 with the weapons and the movesets?